these questions are going to help you make money. They're going to be Bitcoin related, investing related. I think this is probably going to be the best way to do it because I want to help you make money. And if you have investing questions, I am able to answer them. And that's probably that's going to be the best way for you to get value out of this. So as I say, I have questions here from online and I'm going to just get straight into them. Hopefully this setup and everything is working. Okay. So the first question I have here is, why do you think Bitcoin has survived every bear market so far? I think it has survived every bear market so far because it is the same as it was before. People think that Bitcoin has changed. It hasn't actually changed in any real way. Really, in any way at all, it hasn't changed. The code is the same. The way it runs, the way Bitcoin is mined is the same. The only difference is that people who are involved in the market, all the people who are making the decisions as to whether they want to buy or sell Bitcoin at a specific time, they are the things that are changing, but it's not actually Bitcoin that has changed. Every 4 years, Bitcoin goes through these cycles, or over the past number of cycles, Bitcoin has gone through this sort of situation where you have a lot of people selling Bitcoin at one point and then a lot of people buying Bitcoin at one point. But every time the cycle rolls around, it ends up where Bitcoin is exactly the same. And I think that's where people get confused. They think either Bitcoin is finished, or Bitcoin, when the price goes up a lot, they think this is the time now to get in because X, Y, Z. But really, you need to realize that the code of Bitcoin has been the same since Satoshi Nakamoto actually launched it back in 2009 when they founded Bitcoin, or as I call it, a discovery, because it's the same. It's the same as it was when Satoshi Nakamoto founded it back in 2009. What convinces you personally that Bitcoin has long-term value? I think that Bitcoin has a capped supply, and that is probably one of the biggest things that people forget. And what is a capped supply? This just means that it is a limited supply. You can't create any more of it. And that is totally different with fiat currency. Fiat currency that we use on a daily basis, whether you use the US dollar or the euro or whatever, the government can increase the amount of fiat that's in the system, or the central banks can, at any time they decide to. And they can put money into the economy if they feel that this is going to help the economy or slow down the amount of fiat currency that is moving around in the system. They can take it out. They can make changes to the amount of fiat currency in the system. And that is such a big problem with fiat currency. And that's why we have inflation. And I think people get confused sometimes, and I don't blame anyone for getting confused around the situations with inflation, because there's so much talk in the media around inflation, where inflation, why it is happening, people can be given different ideas as to why inflation has happened, or why it is happening, or why we may see an increase in inflation. But that's just something people need to realize. It's because these central banks are increasing the amount of fiat that's in the system. And if you have more of a certain thing, the value of each individual unit of that thing will go down. It's the same if you look at property or anything else similar of that nature. If you have more of a supply, the individual units will go down in value. Now, you can have other circumstances where different things may affect this logic, but usually it is all the time the same, where if you have more of a supply, each individual unit of that is going to be worth less. And with Bitcoin, you have a limited supply. You can't create any more of it. And someone might say, "Oh, what if Satoshi Nakamoto just decides to create more of it?" I'll tell you that there is code of Bitcoin that ensures that you cannot create any more of it. It cannot happen. There is a system that will run mining new Bitcoin until the year 2140, where the last Bitcoin will be mined. And at that point, all the Bitcoin that can be mined will have been mined. And you can see how the system is going to run until the last Bitcoin has been mined. And then the system doesn't end there. It will still carry on. But the mining process, the way it is running now, will continue until 2140. As I say, that doesn't mean Bitcoin stops there. It's just the mining process of how it is actually running at this current time. Next question is, what role do you think Bitcoin will play in the global economy in 2030? I think Bitcoin will just be more of what it is now. Again, as I referenced in one of my previous questions, that Bitcoin, it doesn't change a whole lot. What happens in the economy changes, and that affects how Bitcoin might be used in the economy, but Bitcoin itself is not going to actually change. It's what goes on in the external economy will increase the use of Bitcoin, because we can see over the last 16 years that Bitcoin has just increased in use, and that will continue because Bitcoin is just better in so many forms than fiat currency. And that is something that people probably don't realize if you haven't researched it, because when you have researched Bitcoin, you see all the reasons that Bitcoin is better than fiat currency, such as it's easy to send to other people without anyone's permission. You can send Bitcoin to the other side of the world without having third party confirmation. Like if you need to ask a bank to send an amount of money to someone, with Bitcoin, you don't need to do that. You don't need to ask anyone. You can just press send and it'll go. That's if you're using Bitcoin in a way that is your own, when it's your own Bitcoin, rather than just using it in a cryptocurrency exchange. If you have it in a cryptocurrency exchange, you still need to ask them. But if you're holding Bitcoin yourself, then you can just send that to the person on the other side of the world without asking anyone permission to do that. So in 2030, I think Bitcoin will just be more intertwined in the global economy than what it is now, because we can see that over the past number of years, Bitcoin has just increased in the amount of different things that Bitcoin is involved in. Look at the ETF there that was recently approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And years ago, people would have said that Bitcoin will never get an ETF. And you will continue to see Bitcoin more and more become intertwined in everything that we use, in digital payments, in store of value, in any kind of system within the financial system. Bitcoin will just continue to become more and more used because it is better in so many ways to fiat currency. And they say you can't stop an idea whose time has come, and Bitcoin's time has come, where you can clearly see that it is better than fiat currency in so many ways, and people will continue to realize that more and more. At the moment, only a small percentage of the population actually realize that Bitcoin is better than fiat currency, but you will just continue to see that more where people are doing the research and realizing, because it takes research to figure out that Bitcoin is better. It's not that it's not that uh, everyone knows and then people are able to make the decision of one or the other. It's just, it takes a while for the research and the for the research to happen and the information to get to everyone. But once it does, it's happening more and more. We can see it at the moment. The use of Bitcoin is increasing like the use of the internet in the early days due to the amount of users, I mean. So that's just going to continue. It's not going to stop at any one point because Bitcoin is what it is. The code is there. The way it runs is, it is what it is, and it can't be changed, and it's going to just continue to increase in use, similar to the way the internet increased in use back in 1994 all the way through to 2005, say, where you had this crazy increase in amount of users for the internet, and Bitcoin will be exactly the same. Next question is why do some people not trust Bitcoin despite 15 years of history? Why do some people still not trust Bitcoin despite 15 years of history? I think they don't have the research done, and they don't know that they need to research it, and that's just something that they will realize when they see other people are using Bitcoin successfully, and that might cause them to go and look into it. There could be a range of factors as to what causes someone to go and look into Bitcoin, but eventually when they do, you will see that Bitcoin is better than any form of value exchange such as fiat currency at the moment, due to a number or a range of ways. And the wrong information is another reason as to why people still don't trust it, because if you have the wrong information, you can't make an informed decision as to what you should be using or what you should be storing your value in. Bitcoin is not something that I would consider that like some people think about altcoins, where they think if I buy this now and it multiplies by 20 and then I can sell it and I can make a load of money on it. Bitcoin is a store of value that has better properties than fiat currency. If you store your money in fiat currency, I'm sure you know that you will lose value over the long term due to inflation and that. So if you have Bitcoin, it doesn't inflate the same way fiat currency does, and that is why it's a better store of value than your fiat currency. But as for why people still don't trust it, not enough people have realized that they have to go and do the research to understand it. And when they do, they will then trust Bitcoin, and that will just continue to play out in reference to a previous question until forever. Up to 2030, people will just continue to research Bitcoin more and more people will realize that it's a better store of value, it's a better form of transaction of value, and the negative opinions will slowly move away, but inevitably they will move away. And that leads on to one of the next questions here is why. One of the next questions is, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about Bitcoin? You could say that one of the biggest misconceptions is people think that it's just some form of, it's an asset that you could gamble on and make money if you're lucky, and if you don't make money, you're just unlucky, and if you do make money, you were lucky, and you're lucky to take profits on it and all of this type of thing. Whereas from a core principles point of view, it's just better than fiat currency. If you were to judge fiat currency on all its different properties, Bitcoin is better on each of those properties that you would judge it on. So that's why Bitcoin is a better form of money than fiat currency, and that could be one of the biggest misconceptions. There is a lot of them, to be honest with you, but that is certainly one of them. Why do you think traditional investors underestimate Bitcoin? It is a new asset that they're not used to. They don't realize the properties that it has because they haven't done the research. And I would have been looking into investing in stocks and all of the traditional assets in the beginning when I started becoming interested in investing, until I went and realized that Bitcoin is better because I did the research. But if you have had success for a for a number of years and you are doing well in that industry, be that stocks or whatever you're investing in, it's going to take a lot for you to move over to another form of an investing asset or a store of value or whatever you want to consider it as. It's going to take a lot of convincing for someone to say, look, even if they're doing well in a certain industry, and maybe if they're doing very well and they understand an industry, maybe if they have gained such an understanding in that industry and they're doing very well, maybe they should just keep doing what they're doing, and maybe in the future they can look into Bitcoin. I would say Bitcoin is a better store of value over the long term than really any other asset. But if people understand what they're doing, they should probably just keep doing that, and then take the time over a long period of time to go and understand Bitcoin. Don't just jump into it because someone said that it's a great thing to do, and it's very likely that most people won't do that anyway. But if someone is doing well in traditional investments, they're not just going to want to jump across into Bitcoin, which they don't understand. And then they won't go and do the research on Bitcoin, possibly because they're already doing well in the industry that they're in. So they underestimate Bitcoin because they don't feel the need to go and do the research, because they're fine in the industry that they're in. And as I say, if that's you, stay doing what you're doing, and then when you have free time, read a couple of books on Bitcoin, and you will see what I'm talking about. Why do you think Bitcoin mining gets so much criticism? I think it gets a lot of criticism because of the energy that it uses, but people also forget that the regular legacy financial system that we use at the moment is using way more electricity than anyone realizes. To run the regular financial system takes a huge amount of electricity. And when people say that Bitcoin uses a lot of electricity, they forget about that. And look at all the problems that there is with the current financial system. I could talk until tomorrow about the problems that exist within the financial system that we have at the moment. And that is using a huge amount of electricity to run that. So we're spending this electricity to run the financial system, and then some people might complain about the electricity that Bitcoin uses. And then another point to that is Bitcoin can be run off renewable energy. You can use energy where in parts of the world where energy is easy to get, and you can mine Bitcoin off renewable energy, and that is happening in a lot of places around the world. People don't see that because it's probably not in the media a lot, but I have seen it where there are big efforts gone in to use renewable energy to mine Bitcoin, and that is a much better way of obviously sourcing energy. And Bitcoin gets a lot of criticism for the energy that he uses, but there's a lot of reasons as to why it's actually a good use of energy, and also people are using renewable energy. So that is something to remember on that. And I think we're at about 20 minutes. So I will leave this video there, and I will get into more questions in the next video. If you have more questions, you can put them in the comments below, and I will make sure to answer them in the next video.